doing everything your doctor told you to do and you're still not getting better, I want to talk to you. Because when that happens, there are very real risks to staying passive in that situation. Now, the first one, of course, is very obvious. There's the physical risks. We're talking about disease progression, symptoms that get harder to control or reverse, new problems developing on top of old ones, or even permanent physical damage that can occur when disease is left unchecked. But the other risk is quieter, sneakier, and just as damaging. It's the psychological risk, the psychological impact. Because when you keep showing up and diligently following the plan, taking the meds, saying no to things you want to say yes to, and saying yes to things you'd rather not, doing all of the tests and nothing changes, something can start to happen internally. Tell me if you've felt this before. You start wondering if you're the problem, if you're not explaining it right, or if you're missing something obvious, or if you're somehow causing this, or that maybe you're making this bigger than what it is. But look, if you were making this up, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be watching this video. You wouldn't be so exhausted from trying so hard to just be heard. So before we go any further, I need you to hear this. Your treatment not working is not a personal moral failing. It's simply your body doing exactly what bodies do when something important hasn't been identified yet. The reason I want to call this out is because what's so infuriating is that so many of those thoughts of self-doubt did not begin in your mind. They're thoughts that get planted there like a seed when doctors are too quick to imply that if the treatment isn't working, the issue must be compliance or stress or anxiety or mindset or effort or some other measure that's within your control. This is why I don't want you to stay passive on this. But I don't want you to panic either, because I'm going to lay this out very simply for you. Because often when the treatment isn't working, it comes down to one of three things. And once you know which one you're dealing with, it becomes a lot easier to figure out what that next step is going to be. So let's break this down. Step one, probably the most obvious one, maybe the diagnosis is wrong. Here's how you can start to tell if this is the one that's applicable for you. If the diagnosis explains part of what is happening, but there are other symptoms that just never quite fit right. Or if treatment improves one thing, but leaves other major issues untouched. Sometimes we see this with people who have new symptoms that keep popping up that now just don't fit in what was the original story. Or sometimes symptoms can get blamed on disease progression without anybody ever stepping back and looking at the big picture again and asking if the original assumption still holds true. Another big red flag for this is if the diagnosis was made quickly during a crisis or years ago and has never been revisited. A lot of diagnoses start as best guesses. The problem is oftentimes over time, they get put in the chart and they become a fixed label or identity instead of a working hypothesis. There's a reason it's called practicing medicine, because especially when it comes to, unusual or rare diseases, it can be really hard to pin down what that is. And you typically do go through a string of diagnoses, but often providers get so caught in their day-to-day in and out of the appointments that there's never that time or space to pause and reevaluate. It's just whatever is the next step on the plan. But once that label gets put into place, everything tends to get interpreted through that lens. I see this with my clients. Oh, she has autoimmune disease. It's just her autoimmune disease, and don't worry about it because she's being treated for autoimmune disease. Well, those things don't, it's not a one and done. But sometimes, your care providers can just get so caught in that next cycle that the pause for reevaluation simply isn't there. So what do we do about it, though? Your job is not to blow up the diagnosis, but simply to re-examine it. And that looks like asking questions like, what symptoms does this diagnosis not explain? If this were wrong, what else can we consider? Or what made us confident in this diagnosis in the first place, and has anything changed since then? These are questions that you can ask yourself and also your provider. Bucket number 2. Sometimes the diagnosis is correct, but the plan is wrong. Here's how you can start to recognize this one. Sometimes it's you're on treatment, but nothing is really changing. Or things improve briefly, but then plateau. Or you fix one symptom and like whack-a-mole, up pop 3 new ones. Now, the problem here is that the response from the healthcare system is almost always the same. Let me talk to you about medical math. You may have heard of chicken math. You've probably heard of girl math, but you may not have heard of medical math. And it's this concept of addition and subtraction. And unfortunately, in the healthcare system today, medical math usually only goes one way, and it's addition. The response to problems with the plan is almost always adding more things to the plan. Adding another medication, adding another specialist, another referral, another test, another surgery. But nobody stops to go, is there something we should be subtracting? Because I can't tell you how many times the breakthrough actually comes when we stop, look at everything that's involved, and start removing pieces, subtracting a medication that's causing side effects that can be mistaken as disease progression, subtracting a supplement that's interfering with absorption or metabolism of other things, subtracting a dietary trigger that nobody's identified or addressed at this point, subtracting a treatment that made sense on paper but does not make sense in your body. Why does this happen, you might ask? Let me tell you. Because addition feels like action and subtraction feels risky. Doctors are taught and reinforced through societal expectation that they should be doing something. The amount of times that I have seen a provider be, for lack of a better term, forced to give somebody a prescription for something that was wildly unnecessary. I mean, if I had a dime for every time, I might not have needed to start a business. It's crazy. People go see doctors and expect that they're going to get something and become very irate if they don't. That's just being real. That is what you are up against when you look at everybody else that the provider is seeing in a day. So providers, not only do they get trained to fix problems with medications in medical school, but U.S. society has significantly reinforced this belief that if you go to an appointment and you don't get a slip of paper, what did you even pay the doctor for? And that's, anyways, that could be, I've done a whole video about the problem with that, specifically with medications. But the other side of that too, or another angle of this, is there's no money in subtraction. And honestly, I think that's the sneakier and more pervasive issue here. The pharma companies, the insurance companies, they don't profit when your symptoms improve because something was removed. There is no financial incentive for anybody to say, let's stop and rethink this. Maybe you're on too many pills. Maybe we need to try an elimination diet. Maybe we need to have your home inspected for mold. Like, nobody in healthcare makes money off of those things. And so they're not taught. Like, it's just not the frame of reference. So what can you do about it? Start asking these high level questions, high level at the plan, not effort. Okay. So instead of what else can we try looking through the lens of why do we think this should be working now? What would tell us that this plan is wrong? Or what might be contributing to the issue that we haven't removed? This one is probably something that you will have to do more on your own than with your provider. I just had to go head to head with a provider last week who did not understand that somebody's diet was playing a role in the stomach condition they had, because this provider truly was going to die on this hill that because somebody was receiving a medication for the condition, the food didn't matter. And that's just not how it works. So there's a lot of very still old school mentality. I mean, medical treatment across the board still hasn't gotten all the way up to par with what we know today about the impact of the environment and nutrition on the body. So I would encourage you to try to have that conversation with your provider, especially if there's been some dialogue there before, but also don't be surprised if that doesn't go anywhere. Food and environment, it's really not taught in medical school. Medical school, they teach medications, and it's a shame because it really is often a two-part process. Like, you need both. I'm not team medication or no medication or whatever. Like, the world is not black and white. It's most often 10,000 shades of gray, and treatment plans tend to be one of those shades of gray. Bucket number 3 is when there are things that are being treated as separate when they are clearly connected. This one drives me bananas. It's incredibly common. And here's how you know this is what's affecting you. You have multiple conditions that flare together, or treating one makes another worse. Or you're seeing, it's my favorite, do you see a lot of specialists and none of them talk to each other? Or when you're in the room and you're starting to talk about your symptoms, you'll hear the specialist say, "Oh, it's not my area." Here's the thing. You are one organism, one human body, one organism, meaning many parts all working in tandem. Your blood supply feeds the entire body. It's circulating around through everything. The hormones circulate in the blood supply and touch all of the organs. The fact that we don't treat the bodies as a system first and individual component second is just bizarre to me. It absolutely bonkers. It makes no sense. Because these things all overlap and they amplify each other. Autoimmune, metabolic, hormonal conditions. They don't live in silos. They don't only not impact each other. It's almost like, everything is in the same bucket of water and like sways together, right? But these providers tend to operate in silos. And a lot of times people kind of have the idea that they have this whole medical care team working for them and, talking about the case. And it's not like that. I mean, there are good doctors that go above and beyond, believe me. But for the most part, your doctor's not thinking about you between appointments. Like, they're just not. They look at your chart when they're going in the room, sometimes not even until they get in the room, to just kind of refresh their memory on what this appointment is for, and then they're moving on to the next thing. They're not cross-communicating, they're not problem-solving, they're not investigating. It is not like Dr. House. And it causes so many problems, especially for people who have autoimmune and rare diseases, because they don't just affect one body system. And even the treatments for these things don't just affect one body system. And when you look at an entire human being with this tiny tiny scope. It makes no sense, and it fails the treatment plan. So what can we do about it? Ask yourself, what symptoms rise and fall together? What changed right before multiple things worsened? What treatments help one thing but hurt another? That helps to identify that there's, or if you just have a weird constellation of these chronic ongoing things, have you ever stopped to consider that they're connected? I can't tell you how many people I have worked with who have clearly connected conditions, but nobody, not them as a person or their specialist, their primary, nobody thought to connect it. And it was only in working with a personal medical strategist that they finally got that all connected and got some cohesiveness between the treatment plans. But we had to frame it that way for those providers, because they just are not taught to think in that big picture interconnectedness. They're just not. And unfortunately, I do not have an easy remedy for that, other than maybe, I hope, this starts to shift your thinking. I always operate from the lens that everything is interconnected until proven otherwise. Unfortunately, a lot of times in medical care, it's really kind of treated the other way around, and they act like the things that they're talking about and doing, the kidney doctor acts like all they do and all they deal with and all their treatment plan, like everything is only the kidneys, and rarely do they even think about the impact on the other body systems for more than a fleeting moment. And it is, I don't understand why, but it is our responsibility, you as the individual, to look at that whole big broad picture and start to frame it in a way that those specialists can see those connections and those impacts. Here's what I want you to do after this video. Figure out which bucket you're in. Is the diagnosis wrong or incomplete? Is the diagnosis right, but the plan wrong? Have we gone too far in the lane of addition with medical math? Or is everything being treated separately when it's clearly overlapping? And is it time that we shift the way we are seeing this? You do not have to solve everything today, but I do want you to find at least one clear next step and take an action for it. Send the portal message, make the appointment. Maybe it's just write out the words that you're going to use. And if you're thinking, but I don't even know what to say and I don't know how to bring these things up without getting shut down, that's exactly why I created Words That Work, the anti-gaslighting script book. It's a full set of 12 scripts you can use during appointments when you're getting dismissed or rushed or the plan just doesn't fit, so that you don't have to try to figure out the right words for that moment. That link is in the caption. It's free. Go get it. My gift to you, so that you can go into that appointment with confidence and actually start to get a plan that moves things in the right direction. And listen, if you're not getting better, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Please don't let anybody make you feel that way. It means that we're still missing something. So let's stop pretending that you're the problem.